black in her eye. This was 2 days before the disappearance. The farmer, Pattinson, had borrowed a pony and trap from his landlord, Williams, so he could take his new wife to visit her mother in South Shields. Caroline never did visit her mum, but Patterson was away with the trap for a day. He told the authorities that he was visiting customers to get paid for animals he'd sold and to arrange the sales of grain, sugar beet, potatoes, cabbages, onions and cauliflowers. A friend of Patterson, Richard Craig, replaced Hawes at the coaching inn, and things became really successful for everyone. Until suddenly, in the middle of the night, Craig and his wife Mary began suffering night terrors. They were both awoken by screams and disruption. On one occasion, Mary awoke to see the reflection of a big, crouching man in her dressing table mirror. As she screamed, the mirror shattered and the figure disappeared. At that time, she had no idea that Hawes had been walking in a stooped manner since the assault he'd suffered. And when Craig told Patterson what was experiencing, his blood must have turned icy, realizing that maybe his old adversary was back from the other side of the Great Divide. Most are sure that Patterson had finished him off. But now, what was he going to do to rid him of the ghost of the murdered man? A local clergyman said it was because Patterson's body had never been found, nor buried on sanctified ground, that it was forever cursed to walk in the shadows. This horrified Caroline most. She may have been involved in the murder, and she began to have nightmares, and on one occasion swore that she had felt his hands on her body as she slept. Once again, Patterson had to get rid of his enemy all over again. One day in April 1824, he took a cart and he disappeared for a day. Over the course of the following week, 2 small children found the decayed body of Hawes in a boggy area of land near where a home for the elderly now stands. The body was never formally identified as Hawes, but it was buried in an unmarked grave in a churchyard nearby. The ghosts stopped harassing people. And all was well for well over 150 years. But when the coaching house changed hands and became a pub called the Kenton Bar, it was remodelled, and the workmen spoke of a stooped figure of a man that would plague them, stealing or moving tools, jumping out of the shadows, and on one occasion pushing a man off his ladders. Les Conway worked on the refitting of the bar, and he said, "I was putting in some optics and tidying away when a tin tray flew off the bar, hitting me hard on the chest. It wasn't the pain, it was the shock. I actually saw it sitting there. Then it was as if someone invisible had picked it up and flung it at me. The following day, my labourer, Tony Clark, saw a dark, humpy-backed figure walking into the cellar. He followed the man in there, thinking it was somebody who was trying to pinch something. Once he got down there, he shouted at the bloke, and when the man turned to face him, that face was all smashed in and bloody. He said he could see broken skull. He screamed like a lass and legged it." Several tenants claim to have had hauntings. Yet when some of the land nearby, particularly where Hawes used to live, was owned by the Ministry of Agriculture, Fisheries and Food, other staff often saw a dark figure moving along the corridors. In 1978, a woman living in flats opposite the pub awoke to feel liquid dripping onto her face. It was around 7 in the morning. On looking at the liquid, it was red like blood. She looked up to see a man bend over her, his face and skull smashed to pieces, and blood dripping onto her face. In 1981, Ray Richardson was staying at a friend's house less than 80 yards from the pub. He got up to visit the toilet and met a dark, shadowy figure on the landing. Thinking it was a burglar, he tried to grab him. Instead, he fell completely through the shape, falling downstairs, breaking both arms and cracking 4 ribs. Over the years, the entity has moved away from the building it used to work. It seems to be moving down Ponteland Road. From 1980 to 1994, there were over 100 sightings. As recently as November 2010, a woman and her children heard a crash from a living room. She raced downstairs and found that a table and chairs were stacked up in the center of the room, and a bent-over dark figure scurried out into her kitchen. She had no idea about the story of whores, nor had any of the others who had reported the ghostly activity. Some think that because Hawes was never named in that graveyard, he continues to make sure that he will never be forgotten again. On 3 separate occasions, people getting into cars in the car park have seen someone or something in their rear view mirrors. They see blood-red eyes and a shattered face staring back at them. Justice was never done. And until it is, this spirit will continue making mischief.
And now, on today's program...